Hi there, my name is Toby, and on this video I want to talk about the principles of developing this elastic power. You see, I'm doing a particular training on this channel and it's taken me a while to try and explain this. It's quite complex. And I'm trying to find simpler and simpler ways of explaining this. Now, in the background, I've got a video of me doing some sword practice. This is the first one, the samurai sword, and you'll say halfway through I'm changing over to the Tai Chi Sword. So these are the videos in the background, and I am using this elastic power when I'm doing this training, and you can use it in different ways. You can use higher powered elastic, so your body is very tight and very springy, very strong, and this is for stronger structural work. And you can be a bit more relaxed, a bit more fluid, move around more freely, but you're still trying to create this springiness, this bounce, this stretch through your body as you move, and this allows you to create waves and whips and ripples through the body. You see, you're trying to create a movement from the core and spread that movement out down to the end of the weapon or the end of your hands. There's a flow that happens. So what are the principles of this elastic power? How do we do this? What is it I'm actually doing? And I can explain this in many different ways, and I will do on this channel, but today I've broken it down into 8 principles, and I'm going to talk you through these 8 principles. It requires a bit of thought, so you've got to think about it, and experiment with your own practice, see if you can work out some of these principles and integrate them into your practice. So what is the first principle? Well, principle number 1 is this: always seek the optimum structure. So I'm moving around in my body using my bone structure, and whatever I'm doing, whatever movement I'm doing, or whatever task I'm doing with my body, I'm always trying to find the optimum bone structure. There's going to be a way I put my bones together and hold my bones together in just the right geometry to make that task or that movement very easy. You see, what we do is inefficient. We do things by doing too much work, using individual muscles or bending the spine and using 1 or 2 vertebrae in the spine. I've got to try and use my whole body structure together as a single unit. Use the center line of gravity, so I'm reducing my own body weight. I'm lining myself up to the ground, and then using the whole bone structure, which I'm holding together with the tendons. I've got to hold a tension in the joints, this structural isometrics I call it. So I use whole body power to do whatever it is I'm doing. This could be a functional movement, lifting something up onto a top shelf, or bending down, or doing some work in a workshop, or just doing martial arts, moving around. I've got to generate power in martial arts like this, but I've got to find the optimum structure to do that. So principle 1, always seek the optimum structure. This means you've got to experiment and think about what it is you're doing and try and find a better way of doing what it is you're doing. And then principle number 2, well, the optimum structure is usually as close to the neutral stance as possible. So principle number 2 is really practicing the neutral stance. Look at the neutral stance. I'll leave the links below to that. There's a detailed videos on how to build the neutral stance. But this is the midpoint of all movement in your body, the midpoint of all structure in your body. So every optimum structure is usually as close to this neutral stance as possible. It won't be exactly the neutral stance, but you start from the neutral stance and gradually stretch away into the movement or the structure that you want to use, and keep it as close to the neutral stance as possible. In other words, whatever you do, it's better to have a neutral spine, a natural spine. Don't hunch or bend or twist the spine if you don't have to. And even if you do have to, you've got to do it very carefully and try and use the whole bone structure together to do it. And then principle number 3. Principle number 3 is this: you relax towards the neutral stance and tension increases away from it. So when you're in the neutral stance, that's the only position you can relax a little bit, especially when you're doing this martial arts practice. So the neutral stance is the midpoint of all motion. It's the most relaxed position your body can be in. Now, holding this neutral stance in gravity is a bit of work, so you cannot relax completely. You've got to have just enough tension in the joints to hold this correct position. But when you move away from it, you've got to increase that tension, because the further away you move from the neutral stance, the more dangerous it is. You're stretching your body out. You're becoming more vulnerable. your joints are extending. So especially in martial arts, when you're extending away from that, you're vulnerable to attack, or to, especially in wrestling, you're also vulnerable to wrestling. But staying close to the neutral stance keeps you in a stronger position even in wrestling. So when you're at the neutral stance, that's the time you can relax a bit, move around carefully. But when you do any movement that stretches away from this, you've got to increase the tension, increase this elastic power, so that when you relax again, you'll spring back to the neutral stance. So you think of it like a spring. Your body is like a rubber body held in this neutral stance, and when you stretch your body away from it, it just wants to spring back. It springs back to the neutral stance. So this is principle number 3, and this is tricky to do. This take a bit of playing around, a bit of experimenting. So number 1, always seek the optimum structure. Number 2, the optimum structure is usually as close to the neutral stance as possible. And principle number 3, relax towards the neutral stance and increase tension away from it. And then principle number 4, tension in the waist first and most. So in your body, the core is most important, the belly, the TA muscle. You've got to pull the navel towards the spine and the obliques. This supports your lumbar spine. You've got to hold the core strong in the front to support your lumbar spine, which is very important in your body, but ironically is quite weak, because you've only got a bit of spine there. The lumbar is only supported by the waist. So you need to hold tension in the waist to keep strength in the lumbar spine. So always when you move, you check tension in the belly first. Once you've got tension in the belly, you extend that tension out into the rest of the movement. You'll notice usually when you move around, your belly relaxes, and then you're using the arms and legs. So this is wrong. We want the tension in the belly, always more tension in the belly and less tension outwards. It means you're building the structure from the core and using the core to extend out. This is most efficient. And then principle number 5, movement in the hips and shoulders, not so much the spine. In other words, you've got to try to keep the neutral spine, and then all movement you generate in your body, you do that with the movement between the hip joint and the shoulder joint. So you've got to be able to move the shoulders round and round, rotate and stretch the shoulders in the socket. And the same with the hips, you've got to move the hips in the socket. So when you bend over, lean forward, you're not hunching the spine, you're levering at the hip joint. And the same with the arms. When you lift up, you've got to lift up the rib cage, lift up the shoulder, pull the shoulder back. You're trying to keep the shoulders in the neutral position relative to the spine. And again, you've got to look at the neutral stance, and this is most efficient. So you've got to hold some tension, but then you can move the shoulder in the socket to move the arm around. So this way you connect the arm to the spine, and you get this core centralized power projecting out to the arms. Again, you've got to experiment and play with this. And then principle number 6, hold the knees and elbows without twisting them. So this is important. The shoulders and the hips are rotatable. They want to be mobile as possible. You rotate them. But the knees and the elbows are not meant to twist. So you've got to be very careful you don't twist the elbows or twist the knees. Those you've got to hold strong. They only bend forward and backwards. All rotation you've got to take in the hips and the shoulders, and you hold the knees and the elbows quite strong. And this is particularly in martial arts, because people will try and twist your elbow, twist your knee, particularly in wrestling. So you hold that very strong, and you're highly aware of your knees and elbows being twisted. The twist must come from the hips and the shoulders, and if you still need more twist, then it comes into the spine. Then you twist the spine as well. You do want a mobile spine, but you need to be aware of it. You've got to understand the neutral position and try and hold that most of all. And then principle number 7, flow movements from the core outwards like a snake. So once you've got the idea of holding the neutral stance, springing back to the neutral stance, you've got the idea of how to use the hips and shoulders, the elbows and knees, and the core, so the core's got to be strong, then you generate movement by twisting the core, a little twist left and right in the belly, in the spine, and flowing that movement out down the arms and down the legs. So in martial arts, this is how you will throw out punches and throw out kicks. And then the last one, principle number 8, breathe into the spine to create structure and movement. And this is really the most advanced one of these principles. It's quite tricky to do, and you have to practice this and play around with it. If you look at my basic exercise series, I talk about this in structural breathing. If you can study structural breathing, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about integrating the breath together with the movement. And in general, when you expand, you inhale, and when you contract, you exhale. When you bend over, exhale, pull the belly in and collapse. And when you stand up straight, you can inhale, expand the ribs. But you're trying to connect the breathing to the structure. Inhale into the spine itself, feel an expansion in the joints in the inhale, and when you exhale, you're contracting, you're creating power, strength, tension on the exhale. So you're trying to connect this body flow, this movement of flowing out movements from the core, and using the breath to help with that. So again, you've got to experiment, play around, try and feel that your breathing moves into your whole body structure. So once more, these 8 principles. Principle 1, always seek the optimum structure. Principle 2, the optimum structure is usually as close to the neutral stance as possible. Principle 3, relax towards the neutral stance, tension increases away from it. Principle number 4, tension in the waist first and most. Principle number 5, movement in the hips and shoulders, not so much the spine. And number 6, hold the knees and elbows without twisting them. Number 7, flow movements from the core outwards like a snake. And lastly, number 8, breathe into the spine to create structure and movement. So have a little think about these videos. You might have to listen to this video a couple of times, and when you do your own practice, just see if you can think about any of these things and work it out. Again, this is quite advanced, and I'm going to break this down in smaller and smaller steps on this channel, and you can look back at previous videos to get this in more detail. But this is a more advanced and a more general one. I'm trying to explain an overall picture of what I'm doing when I do all this training. And I can simplify this down once more into three simple things. So you could think of this as the 3 principles of body efficiency training and the 3 benefits of this training. So I'm boil this down to the 3 things. So the first one, the first principle of body efficiency training, you could say, is improve posture to reduce effort and increase blood flow. So when you improve your body posture, when you improve your bone structure, you're stretching open your body in a natural position, in a healthy position, and this increases your blood flow. The blood vessels stretch and expand a little bit. There's space for your blood vessels, so your circulation improves dramatically just by holding yourself in a better position. And then the second principle of body efficiency training is increase strength and mobility of the joints to detox and rejuvenate. So once you've got a good body posture, you're holding your bones together in a better way, you then work the joints, you're training the tendons and the ligaments, you're stretching and mobilizing the joints themselves, trying to train the tendons more than the muscles. So this means you've got to work the mobility of your joints, activate your joints, and when you do this, it moves the lymphatic system. So now this, when you move the lymph nodes, you're squeezing and stretching the lymph nodes when you work the joints and you work the tendons. This improves your detoxification, and it brings out the new blood in your body. The new blood comes out and rejuvenates you. So Principle 1, improve posture to reduce effort and increase blood flow. Principle 2, increase strength and mobility of the joints to detox and rejuvenate. So these 2 things are moving the blood and moving the lymphatic system. And then principle number 3, improve your mind-body connection to increase energy, focus, and relaxation. See, when you do this training, you've got to engage your mind. You can't sort of switch off. You can't do it in the background because you've got to feel it. You've got to feel what your body posture is like. Oh yeah, my bones feel better now. I can feel this. This feels stronger. This feels easier. And then when you mobilize the joints and use the tendons, you've got to be aware of, I've got to feel it. You've got to feel, yeah, I can feel the tension in my joint. It's not my muscle, it's my joint. I've got to feel the tendons. You've got to engage your mind and feel what's happening in your body. And you have to teach yourself. You've got to do a lot of personal experimentation to do this. But it's worth it. If you can grasp the idea of what you're doing here, your whole attitude and idea of being being in the body changes. Everything changes. So number 3 is improve your mind-body connection. Your mind and body come together, and if that happens, you can control your energy, your chi, because you'll start to feel it. Once you feel the body structure, feel the tendons, now you can start feeling a flow of energy. This is electricity in your body. So electricity is a real thing, and you can feel it. It's a tingling, a flow, a movement. Sometimes it might feel like air, or you're breathing through your whole body, not just the lungs. And this improves your focus, because your focus is your mind telling your body what to do. You've got to command your body, stand up straight, get that right position. And if you do that, if you say to yourself, right, stand in my best possible position, and then you try and do it, you're giving the command and you're telling your body to find it. Find my best possible body structure. Because you don't really know what it is, you haven't done it before, you've got to keep trying to find it. This is a continual search. You are searching for a better posture, and you've always got to keep this search going on, because you're trying to get more and more efficient. If you think about it, you can never get 100% efficient, you've got to creep up to it. So right now our body posture is very poor, we might be at 10% efficiency. If you can increase your body posture, you might go up to 20% efficiency. That's already doubled it. But if you can get to 80% efficiency, well, now you're talking very easy way of living. You'll feel very easy in your body. But to get from 80 to 85% efficiency is a lot of work. And the closer you get to 100% efficiency, the more mastery it is, the harder you've got to work to get there. So those extra little percentages, you've got to keep working. So this will improve your mind-body connection, your focus, and your relaxation. And relaxation, the same thing. You need awareness. You need to know what it feels like to be relaxed, and it's quite difficult. We've always got a bit of residual tension. So you've also practiced lying down on the floor, deep relaxation, trying to feel what it is like to be relaxed. And then when you stand up in your body posture, your body structure, you're trying to find the most relaxed way you can be. Try and find a position that is held up by the bone structure. If the bone structure holds your body up, you don't need so much tension. Just a little bit of tension in the tendons to hold up the body. So you need to feel this. You need to know what it feels like. So once more, 8 principles of elastic power is: number 1, always seek the optimum structure. Number 2, the optimum structure is usually as close to the neutral stance as possible. Number 3, relax towards the neutral stance, tension increases away from it. Number 4, tension in the waist first and most. Number 5, movement in the hips and shoulders, not so much the spine. Number 6, hold the knees and elbows without twisting them. Number 7, flow movements from the core outwards like a snake. And number 8, breathe into the spine to create structure and movement. Now this takes a lot of thought, a lot of practice, and I hope this just stimulates some thought and think about it and experiment. And then the simpler version, 3 principles of body efficiency training. Number 1, improve posture to reduce effort and increase blood flow. Number 2, increase strength and mobility of the joints to detox and rejuvenate. And number 3, improve mind-body connection to increase energy, focus and relaxation. Okay, I hope this made sense and you enjoyed this little video. Leave any questions below. I will get back to you, and I look forward to seeing you in one of these other videos.